Hey, what's up and good morning. This is morning coffee number 35. We're doing this in a little different venue today. The coffee is made, so I will be drinking it. Also, we've got our whisper guest in the back over here. It's going to be chitter-chattering along, so we're going to try and keep our voices down. But I got a mic again, so I don't need to talk quite as loudly. I wanted today, there's something that's been on my mind the last few days, and I wanted to see if I can verbalize it. And sometimes I'll try and do this like while I'm walking, but knowing that I potentially might have an audience makes it a little simpler. And really what I want to do is kind of tell the backstory of this idea that I've got and how these things come together. So if you listen to season 2 of the podcast, if you listen to all of season 2 of the podcast, the final episode, I talked about my vision for what 1T Unlimited was going to be long term, what the brand was, like the agency. And since then, that was probably 2.5, 3 months ago. Since then, I have kind of shifted my vision for it and like what I'm trying to do, and it's actually kind of exciting. The way that it works out. So, if you remember, my whole thing with agencies is that agencies, as they are traditionally in the marketing space, are not really incentivized to like do the work that they're paid for. They're more incentivized to sell the services and then try and get away with doing as little as possible. And I've always found that to be kind of an issue. And I've always thought also that there's a disconnect between what business owners need, what they're willing to pay for, and the livelihood of the people providing those services, right? So if you're a doer, if you're the talent, so to speak, like a marketer, an Infusionsoft expert, a copywriter, or something like that, then you are almost best served to try and go find some other agency that can handle your sales and marketing for you. So you kind of join their team and you work exclusively with their clients. And I think that most of the reason for that is because it just takes too much time out of your day to try and go find your own customers, to try and go do consults with people and spend money on advertising, all that kind of stuff. And almost without fail, people in that category, people that are, the copywriters and the developers and the designers and people like that, don't have big lists, because why would they, right? Their skill, what they're selling, is not something that really lends itself to creating a big list. Now, there is a lot to be said around creating a personal brand, which is exactly what I'm trying to do. But interestingly enough, it turns out that there's a big problem there. There's a big disconnect. And so the only way for freelancers or consultants or people in that space to make any money is either one, position themselves as super, super expensive and only just have very, very low lead flow and kind of depend on referral traffic, which is what I've done. The only reason I'm still surviving. Or you have to, like I said before, hitch your wagon to some other agency and work under their rules. Well, the problem is those agencies they're not set up for, they're still not set up for that person's best interest. Because really all they're trying to, that's basically one person saying, okay, this is the way that I want to build things, so I'm going to get some other people that'll build my way, and so I'll have more people so we can take on more business. And what I've realized is that not only does that create problems, because the people that are good, like the good Infusionsoft builders, the good designers, the good developers, they don't want a job. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is the ability to really perform and do the thing that they're good at, but they just don't have the resources most of the time to do marketing for themselves, to do advertising for themselves, because they don't have the time for it. And so I listened to an episode of the Gary Vee show, Ask Gary Vee show. This is probably 2 months ago, but there was a guy on there, and his name escapes me, but I'm going to go escapes me. His name escapes me. That's the correct way to put that. Michael Ovitz. who started CAA, which is a talent agency in the entertainment business. So what he said something very interesting in that interview. I found it fascinating just listening to the way that he was talking. But he said something very interesting, and it really sparked some creativity and some things with me. And the first thing he said was that when they were setting CAA up, originally they did like traditional agencies did. They would find talent, and then they would get talent to go to the studios to like audition for specific movies that the studio was already funding. So the idea was that the talent agencies at the time, they represented individual actors, and then the studios were responsible for doing the contract work, if you can think of it in like a house building term, doing the contract work to go and find the director, find the cinematographer, find the crew, then go and find the actors, and the agents were just responsible for like being a middleman between the studio hiring executives and the actual actors. Well, what they did is they started, the way he described it is they started providing the studios with complete packages, which means they would come to the studio and they would say, we've got this movie that we want to make. We have a director that signed on with it. We have the writer who signed on with it. We have the crew already signed on. We have these actors. This is the budget. Do you want to pay for it? And what happens is they go to the studio with the complete package, and now all the studio has to do is provide the funding to make the movie, and then they end up making more money on the back end because they take a larger share of the profits because they don't have to do any of the work. And the agency is responsible for negotiating the project and finding all the individual players. So the director, they find the actors, they find the crew, they find all these different things. Sometimes the studio would come to the agency and say, hey, we want to make this movie, or we have this much money, we want to make a movie in this genre, what do you have? And the agency would then go back and say, okay, let's look at our scripts that we've got, let's look at the directors we've got, let's look at the actors we've got. And instead of like movies just sort of making themselves, they were crafting the movies with all the individual component parts, because movies are more than just a story and some actors, right? There's most movies go through, like the scripts go through several revisions before it ever sees the light of day, and we're not even talking about TV shows yet. But anyway, what he said to me, or went to me, it seemed like he was talking to me, but what he said was very interesting, and I thought I saw a lot of myself when he talked about the talent. He talked about actors. I saw, not because I think I'm an actor, but just because I see a lot of parallels. There's actually, in addition to that, there was a documentary-style movie that I watched called, what was it called? Hired Guns. Hired Guns is about studio musicians, same kind of thing, where the studio musicians a lot of times are the reason why some of the most popular bands or musicians that you know about, the reason why you know about them is because of the studio musicians, but they don't get any of the credit. They're like the hired talent, essentially. Anyway, so I've been on this kick thinking about people like me as these hired guns, these people that come in, do a thing, and then they're on to the next thing. And some of them end up with a recurring gig, which is nice if that's what they're into, but some people really don't want that. Like, I'm not somebody who does really well in a long-term position. I do well when it's like, let me come in and solve a problem, and then let me go solve the next problem. Because it's like, I've already solved the problem, so why am I here babysitting this? Like, there are other people that can do this just as well as I can. And so, in my head, what started to form over the last 3 months since I saw that, and really, since I saw that documentary and then seeing this, it just sort of put it into my head, is this really cool metaphor, an analogy that basically the Infusionsoft marketing automation technical online world, there's a lot of analogies and there's a lot of synchronicity. What's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of, well, there's basically, the analogy runs pretty deep. And so the plan is, and I've kind of talked about this a little bit with some people, but the plan, what I'm thinking about is creating what the world needs. I'll put it this way, because this is the truth. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this, but what the world really needs is an agency that is responsible for finding the projects that need doing, and then finding the talent that are going to do the projects and making it happen. Because business owners don't have time to go find everybody. In fact, most of the time, business owners make the mistake of thinking they can hire one person. In fact, sometimes the talent makes the mistake of selling the business owner on the fact that they only need one person. I know I've done that. But the truth is, these projects, a lot of time, most of the time, are a lot larger in scope than anybody wants to give them credit for. And so you'll start into a project thinking, oh, it's just me, and it'll take me 10 hours a week, and it immediately turns into 40 hours a week, and you need 3 other people. Well, that doesn't work for anybody, because if you don't have time or funds or resources to make that happen, then the business owner, ends up having to wait to get their finished result and all this other stuff. And so what I think really needs to happen is there needs to, first of all, be a more standardized, like rate system, like more standardized, maybe like union or something, where people that are Infusionsoft experts or developers or designers in this space can sort of unify around, okay, this is our rate. This is like how much we charge, so that there's no, because everybody just basically gets to make up their own rate. And not that that's a problem, because I think people should be able to charge whatever they want. But the issue comes in when you are trying to charge something and the customer, you're fully worth what you're trying to charge, but the customer has no context. And so the likelihood of them being willing to pay that is pretty low, because they don't know you and they don't know whether you can do what you say you can do. And so, when you come in, they're expecting to pay $30 an hour and you say it's $350. Sometimes it can be very difficult, and it just takes a different muscle. It takes a different amount of energy to sell somebody on your value in that sense, right? And so there needs to be a central agency that has a budget and that handles finding the projects. So any business owner that needs stuff done, whether it's design or development or whatever, they go to this agency. The agency then goes and finds it. Also, the agency is also finding talent and signing the talent to the agency. The agency puts the projects together, goes back to the business owner and says, this is your budget. You can either go A, B, or C option package, whatever. And then basically it just goes from there. And it just depends on what the budgets are and how everything works. And I think the nice thing about that is that it, in theory, given, if you assume that it actually gains traction and people go for it, in theory, it creates an opportunity where the talent, which you could think of as like actors, are able to spend all their time on the stuff that they want to do, which is the doing stuff. And say you're a strategist, say you're somebody who doesn't really want to do the building, but you're really good at like telling a business owner what they need. Well, that would be like a director. And maybe you don't want to like do the strategy, maybe you don't want to do the building, but you could build some little tech pieces that'll bring things together. Okay, so you could be like on the set design, right? That's the kind of the idea. Now the really cool thing, because I love it when analogies go deep, and that part of the analogy makes a lot of sense from the standpoint of like a one-off project. Like, I need this thing built. I need to build this campaign. Can you help me build this campaign? I want it to be great. But what about somebody who is trying to be lean and wants to bring in experts to run their marketing, like be their ongoing help? Well, there's this other thing in the entertainment business called movie series, like TV shows. So you could run it the same. In fact, the idea is that you would run it exactly the same way that the studios handle their TV shows, which is you sign on for a season. So the studio pays for the season beforehand. Like, the budget's committed to that season. That season lasts 3 months, 6 months, however long it is. And then basically the studio has the option to renew at the end of the season. And see, it goes even further than this, because you could create a pilot episode where you go and build something for maybe a reduced rate, maybe just a set rate, which is just a small portion of what a season would be, but you're just paying for the one episode, right? Just the initial piece, just to see what it looks like. And then, just like it happens in Hollywood, if the studio likes your pilot, then they can pick up the series, essentially. And it goes until the studio decides that they don't want to do it anymore. And it's the same thing. So essentially the studio is like the business owner, and then the talent, all the various people in the talent, like the director and the actors and the voiceover artists and the script writers and all those people, those would match up with the doers, the talent people in this space. And the key is, I think that as somebody who's been an Infusionsoft expert, a copywriter, an ads person, a designer, like a developer, a sort of junior developer, I know that I've wasted time and therefore money trying to find business. When if like it would make more sense for me to, I've said this actually a couple of times. There's a matter of pride with a lot of us where we think, oh, I need to charge $300 an hour because I know this other guy who's charging $250 and I'm better than he is or better than she is, right? And so it's a matter of pride how much you bill. But the truth is, if you bill $350 an hour, guaranteed you're not billing more than 15 hours a week at $350 an hour. There's not enough time to do that, right? And so it would actually be much better for you, much more profitable for you to bill $100 an hour for 35 hours a week than $300 for 30, right? Because there's just more. And the nice thing is you're the 35 and then you're done. Because the other thing with the 10 is that you're spending 10 hours or 15 hours at $350 an hour, but then you're spending another 40 hours per week on top of that doing marketing and sales and other efforts that aren't bringing you anything. So it's just a bunch of time that's getting put out where you're not actually getting paid, where if you had representation, somebody else handling all of that, and all you did was just accept the contracts as they come in, and you get paid, and your time is actually worth what you're saying it's worth. And somebody else, the nice thing is that somebody else handles the negotiations, right? So I was watching the show, The Romanovs, and there's an episode where there's an actress who gets hired to go be part of this show. And during the episode, the actress and the director, they have a falling out. They don't really like each other anymore. And the actress calls her agent and says the agent needs to go and deal with the client, with the director. Well, the agency in that position could step in. Like, again, as a doer, I need the freedom to be able to say, okay, this isn't working out. But the amount of energy that it takes for me to like remove myself from the act of doing and then go into like, I need to handle this client mode and then come back out and then go back to doing, like it's just a massive amount of energy and it's a time suck that just pulls me away from what I should actually be doing. But if there was somebody else where I could just say, okay, here's my projects and I'm having trouble with this one and this is the problem that I'm having. Let me just alert the agency. And part of the reason why I'm paying the agency to find me leads is one, because they're finding me leads, but also because they're like a go-between. They're like an arbiter between me and the client. So I can say, I'm having this issue. Can you help me help them understand this? And so now I can keep working as a doer. I can keep doing the thing that I need to be doing, and somebody else is responsible for communicating describing what's happening or communicating what's happening. And the cool thing too is that most of that would have been taken care of beforehand anyway, because the agent is the person who is selling the client on what's going to happen anyway. So as a doer, all you do is you say, here's what I need to do. You get like a document that says, go here, do this, set this stuff up, you do it, it's done. And you get paid for your time. So that's kind of the idea as it's come to fruition. And I have some initial pieces that I'm starting to build out. My problem is I got other things that I would love to be part of this because I have very specific ideas for the right way to do it, and it's very easy for this thing to get like done the wrong way, because it's very easy for somebody who's really good to get in and take advantage of everybody else. So it's hard. Like I want to be involved because I want to make sure that it's done right, but at the same time I've got a bunch of other things that I'm trying to do this year, and so I've already got some inroads laid, and I'm going to see what I can launch in the next over the short term. But it's kind of an interesting thought, and I'm interested to see how it works and whether people like it. And really, I think the biggest thing is that I feel for anybody who's in my position, anybody who's like a developer or designer or an Infusionsoft person, or any of the marketing automation systems, ActiveCampaign, Entreport, any of that. I just feel like we're underrepresented, and it's time that somebody did something about it. So why not me? Anywho, thanks for listening, the zero of you that listened. I'm going to go through and get this content put up. Again, excited about the podcast for this season. It's probably not, the first episode's not going to come out next week, but it will the week after that. I'll probably do like a preview episode, like a 5-minute little preview that'll get released next week. And then the week after that, our first episode of the podcast will be back. Also, stay tuned because I think I'm going to start mixing up the content for this show, and maybe the timing of it as well. So I want to come up with like a schedule of this is when things are getting released, and then I got to hold myself to it. That's the hardest part. As you could see today, I was quite late to the show this morning. So anywho, hope you enjoy. Last thing that I will say is if you are interested in, I'm starting a newsletter. I'm going to start sending out some content each week. So if you're interested in that, there's a sign-up bot at the bottom of the homepage on my website. Just go to brettmarno.com. Also, if you are in need of services, if anything that I've talked about from a technical perspective, if you need Infusionsoft help or anything, I want to help. So if you go to the services page on my website, brettmarno.com/services, there are some options there for different ways you can get involved. The first is we can get on the phone and I can help you solve problems. The second is you can join a weekly group call-in membership where you get access to my Slack account and I can answer questions for you. And the third is we can actually set up a weekly one-on-one call where we'll talk through anything that you need and help you through that. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out on the services page. Otherwise, we will see you on Monday. Peace.